So I was sitting here, and it's currently 4:02 a.m. I've been working on finals most of the night, so I decided that it's probably time to have a rant about Tyrannical versus Fortified and why it's all so stupid and why the game is suffering because of these two affixes. As you can see on the screen, we have one of the worst offenders of this dilemma, Vikagoth, the last boss of Siege of Borealis, and the reason he's a major offender of this is because he has demolishing tentacles that spawn periodically and a fairly high health gripping tentacle. But that doesn't really explain why there's a dilemma, so let's kind of jump into it. So, at face value, Fortified, non-boss enemies have 20% more health and inflict up to 30% increased damage. Seems fair. Tyrannical, boss enemies have 40% more health and inflict up to 15% more increased damage. So whenever you're looking at this, it's very clear what the intent is, right? Tyrannical, they want the bosses to take longer. They want them to be more epic. They want them to challenge you more. Fortified, they want the trash to be grueling and for you to take significantly longer to be able to kill it. They want it to be like a real back and forth battle. However, there's major issues with this, and it definitely does not turn into that. And this is because of how Tyrannical scales. The 40% increased health actually increases boss encounter time by more than 40%, significant amounts of time, like a significant amount of time. And this is very, very apparent in bosses that have phases. So what I'm talking about, Vikagoth has phases, like with the demolishing tears. If you kill the demolishing tears fast enough, then you're actually able to DPS down the gripping more. Once the gripping dies, no more demolishing terrors spawn. But it actually caps out at 5 demolishing terrors, so that's kind of something that you need to think of. However, if you're actually able to get the gripping down super early on in the phase and be able to kill it before 5 demolishing terrors spawn, then you're actually in good shape. Whenever you're doing it on Tyrannical, though, the likelihood of this is significantly decreased because all of your damage, all 3 of your DPS players has to be able to do 100% of their damage into the demolishing terrors, and very little, if any, damage is actually able to go into the gripping tentacles. This is also the same for the second boss of Siege of Borealis, Dread Captain Lockwood, how her withdrawal mechanic works. So basically, she will jump away and leap back onto the ship, and she'll spawn adds that you have to actually fight. And whenever she does phase, it takes more time out of the key that you would otherwise be fighting. And whenever you're doing this on Tyrannical, you're going to get more phases. That's just plain and simple. But the time that you gain from getting increased phases is significantly more than the 40% that the Tyrannical would just give you, because the phase is inadvertently costing you more. And that's the crux of the issue, is that 40% increased boss health does not only equate to 40% longer boss kill times. It sometimes can double the boss length. This Vikagoth footage that we're actually looking at, it is 8 minutes. An 8-minute encounter, by the way. And you can't see my face, but I don't know what's going on, but I am very upset and looking like I'm ready to just off myself in this VOD, and I don't know what's happening. Other bosses that are really bad about this, you have to think about something like the Shrine of the Stormlast boss, Volzith. Whenever you get his phase whenever you actually have to go kill those drowned Deathbringers in the intermission phase, that takes you significantly more time. Yasma. On Yasma, you get Soul Rend and like it copies ads. That costs you a lot of time that you actually have to kill these ads as well. Whereas on Fortified, while the trash does do 30% increased damage and they have 20% more health, this very infrequently changes the pulls that you're able to do between Tyrannical and Fortified. And that's the core of the issue here, is that the health that's gained from Tyrannical most of the time does not actually equate to only 40% longer encounters. It equates to significantly longer encounters, and you normally have to end up using your Bloodlust on them because of just how long, just like the sheer length of these encounters. Another one, Elderly Axa, spawning the ads. Having to kill those ads is very important. Cragmaw with his trample. It's just, there's so many phases, like phase-style fights inside of these dungeons, that the fact that you can't play Tyrannical because it costs you sometimes extra 3, 4, 5 minutes sometimes because of these breakpoints that you're not able to meet DPS wise is bananas to me. Why? Okay, so for me, Tyrannical and Fortified should not exist inside of the game. The dungeons already scale linearly and they already scale exponentially with key level, and they get more and more increasingly difficult. Why do we have to have an additional modifier on top of them that says 1 week the trash is harder, 1 week the boss is harder? But harder is relative here because it just costs you just ever increasingly longer chunks of time that you are not able to really piece through. So that at its core is the very glaring issue of why Tyrannical is so bad and should be removed from the game. It just doesn't really have a place, even though, okay, so in Legion it was actually on the tier 10 row, so them actually moving it to the tier 2 row where it's always present is an okay thing. But these two affixes can never be balanced inside of the game with one another, just because of how. So basically, if the bosses have, okay, so basically the bosses with intermission phases are always going to take significantly longer than just giving the trash like 20% more health. So you would either have to increase the trash health to make Fortified significantly harder, or you decrease down Tyrannical's health, where you make the trash very trivial on Tyrannical weeks. And that is why it is always going to be an issue here. And that at its core is why I believe that it should be, both Tyrannical and Fortified should be removed. I think for a lot of people, they want the trash to feel how it is on Tyrannical, and they want the bosses to feel how they are on Fortified. I'm about the same way. I feel like it should be like that. Half the time too, you don't know what actually scales with Fortified or Tyrannical. The Hoodoo Hexer ads on the last boss, the Avatar of Seth Rallis encounter, scale with Fortified. There's just like a lot of like random boss mobs that will just scale with Fortified. They don't even scale with Tyrannical. So half the time you don't even know what is scaling with what, and that also causes major problems. Like why is it like that either? So but yeah, our 8-minute Vic Goth encounter. I've currently been recording for 7 minutes and 30 seconds. You're not even going to be able to see the end of it. This is hilarious to me that the boss fight hasn't even ended on my 8-minute video.